My son dumped me in a nursing home to steal my house. He didn't know I'm a billionaire, and I just bankrupted his entire company. My family left me at a nursing home. They never knew my secret wealth. Chapter 1: The Scent of Betrayal. The smell of cheap bleach and boiled cabbage hit me before I even crossed the threshold. It was the distinct, unmistakable scent of forgotten people. And according to my own flesh and blood, I was now officially one of them. I stood frozen in the sterile, fluorescent-lit lobby of the Sunset Meadows care facility. My hands were trembling, but not from old age or frailty. I was gripping the handle of a single, battered leather suitcase until my knuckles turned completely white. That pitiful little bag held absolutely everything my son thought I owned in this world. Just a few faded cardigans, some cheap reading glasses, and a framed photograph of my late wife, Eleanor. Julian didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye as he aggressively signed the admission papers. He just kept checking his heavy, gold Rolex. It was the exact same watch I had bought him for his college graduation, a milestone I had paid for in full. Beside him, my daughter-in-law, Clara, was actively tapping her designer heel against the cheap linoleum floor. She was practically vibrating with impatience to get out of this depressing building. I knew exactly what was going through her greedy, calculating mind. She was already mentally knocking down walls and redecorating my living room. The living room of the house they were actively stealing from me right at this very moment. "It's for the best, Dad," Julian finally muttered, sliding the clipboard back across the receptionist's desk with a loud clack. His voice was utterly devoid of any real emotion or guilt. "You need round-the-clock care, and Clara and I just don't have the time to deal with it anymore." It was a disgusting, bold-faced lie. A cold, calculated piece of fiction wrapped in an incredibly thin veneer of fake concern. I didn't need any medical care, and I certainly wasn't losing my mind. What I actually needed was the warmth and support of my family in my twilight years. But what they desperately needed was my signature on a forged power of attorney document and my immediate absence. I watched in absolute silence as they turned their backs on me. Their hurried footsteps echoed down the long, empty hallway without a single backward glance. They were quite literally throwing me away like a piece of broken, useless furniture. They thought they had outsmarted a helpless, senile old man named Arthur Vance. They saw me as nothing more than a retired, middle-class accountant with a meager pension and a modest suburban home. That was the humble, unassuming story I had intentionally fed them for decades. I had wanted them to build their own lives from the ground up. I wanted them to understand the brutal value of hard work without relying on a massive financial safety net. But as I watched the heavy glass doors slide shut behind them, sealing my fate, I realized my life lesson had failed miserably. A slow, dark, and incredibly bitter smile crept across my wrinkled face. They had absolutely no idea what they had just done. They had no earthly idea who I really was beneath this fragile exterior. Julian and Clara thought they had just brilliantly secured their financial future by dumping me in this miserable, lonely place. They thought they had won the ultimate prize. What those two fools didn't know was that the modest 4-bedroom house they were so eager to claim was practically worthless to me. It was just a microscopic drop in a very deep, very hidden ocean of wealth. I wasn't just Arthur Vance, the tired old man waiting to die. I was the silent, sole founder of Vance Capital. I was holding a diversified portfolio of assets that would literally make Julian's eyes bleed if he ever saw the balance sheet. For over 30 years, I had quietly and ruthlessly amassed a staggering fortune in commercial real estate, tech startups, and offshore trusts. And I had kept every single penny of it completely hidden from my entitled, lazy son. A young nurse with kind, tired eyes and a name tag that read Maya gently touched my shoulder, pulling me from my dark thoughts. "Mr. Vance, let's get you settled into your new room," she said with a soft, sympathetic voice. I nodded slowly, playing the part of the heartbroken, frail senior citizen to absolute perfection. I shuffled down the depressing hallway, leaning heavily on my wooden cane, absorbing the grim reality of my new surroundings. Peeling floral wallpaper, the distant, echoing sound of someone coughing, the overwhelming, suffocating sense of despair. This was exactly what they intended to be my final prison. But as Maya unlocked the heavy door to my cramped, dimly lit room, my mind was already racing miles ahead. I wasn't going to just lay down and wither away in this lumpy, uncomfortable bed. I was going to teach my son and his vicious wife a lesson they would never, ever forget. I waited patiently until Maya closed the door, leaving me completely alone in the deafening silence. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress and reached deep into the hidden inner pocket of my worn wool coat. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of a sleek, highly encrypted satellite smartphone. It was finally time to make a phone call. It was time to call Harrison Sterling, my ruthless wealth manager, and initiate the scorched earth protocol I had prayed I would never have to use. Julian and Clara wanted my old house so badly. Fine, they could have the empty, rotting shell, but they were about to lose absolutely everything else they held dear. The game had just begun, and those two idiots didn't even realize they were already checkmated. Mated. Chapter 2, Protocol Lazarus. The screen of the encrypted phone cast a cold, blue glow across the cramped, depressing room. I punched in a 12-digit sequence that only 2 people on the entire planet knew. It didn't even ring twice before a sharp, impeccably professional voice answered on the other end. "Mr. Vance, I wasn't expecting a transmission on this line," Harrison Sterling said, his tone instantly shifting to high alert. Harrison wasn't just a lawyer. He was a financial shark who had guarded my empire for over 2 decades. "Plans have changed, Harrison," I rasped, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't carry through the thin, paper-like walls. "Julian and Clara just checked me into Sunset Meadows." There was a heavy, stunned silence on the other end of the line. Even a ruthless corporate killer like Harrison was momentarily speechless at the sheer audacity of my own son. "They actually went through with it," Harrison finally murmured, his voice dripping with absolute disgust. "I assume they forced the forged power of attorney document you suspected they were drafting." "They did," I replied, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a screaming skull. "They think they have total, uncontested control over my estate, my house, and my checking account. Sir, give me the word, and I will have a team of litigators rip them to shreds before dinner," Harrison offered, the venom evident in his clipped words. But a quick, legal bloodbath was far too easy for what they had just done to me. I didn't just want to take back my modest house. I wanted to completely dismantle their false reality piece by piece. "No, Harrison, we are going to let them believe they won for a little while longer," I instructed, a cold fire burning in my chest. "I want to activate Protocol Lazarus." I heard a sharp, audible intake of breath through the receiver. Protocol Lazarus wasn't just a defensive legal maneuver. It was a total financial annihilation sequence we had designed years ago. You see, Julian fancied himself a brilliant, self-made entrepreneur in the competitive tech sector. He loved to brag at upscale dinner parties about his thriving startup and his genius business acumen. What my arrogant son didn't know was that his primary angel investor, a faceless venture capital firm based in the Caymans, was actually me. I had been silently propping up his failing, mismanaged business for 5 years just to keep his fragile ego intact. And Clara, with her designer bags and luxury spa retreats, thought she was living the high life purely on her husband's success. She had no earthly idea that the exclusive rewards program attached to her black credit card was actually funded by a blind trust I controlled. "Pull the plug on the Cayman Fund, Harrison," I commanded, feeling absolutely zero remorse. "Liquidate our entire position in his company by tomorrow morning. That will trigger an immediate margin call that will instantly bankrupt his startup, sir," Harrison warned, though I could hear a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. "Exactly," I whispered, gripping the phone tighter until my joints ached. "And while you're at it, sever the trust connection to Clara's primary accounts. I want every single credit card she owns to decline embarrassingly by tomorrow afternoon." "Consider it done, Mr. Vance," Harrison said, the typing on his end sounding like rapid, precise gunfire. "What about the house?" the one they are currently looting. I chuckled, a dry, raspy sound that echoed eerily in the tiny, sterile room. Let them move in, Harrison. Let them start the expensive renovations. Let them sign the binding contractor agreements. Let them dig a financial hole so incredibly deep they will never, ever be able to climb out. Just then, I heard a soft knock on my door, followed by the metallic jingle of keys. I have to go. The warden is checking in, I muttered, quickly ending the call and slipping the phone back into my coat. I slumped my shoulders, instantly transforming back into the helpless, discarded old man they all thought I was. The heavy door creaked open, and Nurse Maya peeked her head in, holding a small plastic cup of generic vitamins. Just checking on you, Mr. Vance. She smiled warmly, completely unaware that she was standing in the presence of a financial titan. Are you settling in okay? As well as can be expected, my dear, I replied, forcing a slight, pathetic tremble into my voice. I took the tiny paper cup from her hands with a grateful, subservient nod. She gave me a pitying look before quietly closing the door, leaving me alone in the dark once more. I walked over to the single, barred window and looked out at the bleak, empty parking lot. Somewhere across town, Julian and Clara were probably popping an expensive bottle of champagne to celebrate their newfound freedom. They were toasting to their cleverness, completely oblivious to the massive, invisible guillotine hanging directly over their necks. That champagne was going to taste incredibly bitter by tomorrow morning. Because the empire they thought they were inheriting was a mirage, and the reality they were about to face was a living nightmare. I watched a single, dark storm cloud roll over the horizon, perfectly mirroring the storm I had just unleashed. They threw me away to rot, but they forgot one crucial detail about old, discarded things. Sometimes they are highly explosive. Chapter 3: The Dominoes Fall. The morning sun crawled through the dusty blinds of my nursing home window like a reluctant prisoner. Breakfast was a gray, tasteless bowl of oatmeal that perfectly matched the depressing mood of this wretched place. Nurse Maya offered me a warm, sympathetic smile as she set the plastic tray on my rolling bedside table. She treated me like a fragile piece of antique glass that might shatter if spoken to too loudly. I played the part flawlessly, offering a weak, trembling nod of absolute gratitude before she left the room. But the very second the heavy door clicked shut, the frail old man vanished, replaced by a ruthless predator. I pushed the repulsive oatmeal aside and pulled the encrypted satellite phone from its hiding spot inside my mattress. A single, glowing green notification pulsed on the dark screen, signaling a priority message from Harrison. It was a highly detailed, encrypted dossier outlining the absolute financial carnage we had unleashed overnight. I opened the first attached file, and a genuinely wicked, cold smile stretched across my weathered face. Julian's precious tech startup, the company he constantly paraded around like a golden trophy, was currently in a total freefall. At exactly 8:00 a.m., Harrison had completely liquidated the Cayman Fund's massive, foundational position in his company. This sudden, violent withdrawal triggered an immediate and catastrophic margin call that Julian was entirely unprepared to cover. According to Harrison's ruthless internal corporate spies, Julian was currently barricaded inside his glass-walled corner office. He was reportedly screaming at his frantic CFO, while his entire board of directors demanded emergency, crisis-level meetings. His remaining private investors were panicking, fleeing the crashing stock like terrified rats from a rapidly sinking ship. He was desperately trying to contact his anonymous angel investor, begging for a lifeline that would never come. He was completely unaware that the invisible man ruining his life was currently eating gray oatmeal in a cheap nursing home. Julian always thought he was a brilliant, untouchable visionary in the cutthroat tech world. He was about to learn that he was nothing more than a hollow puppet whose financial strings had just been violently severed. I swiped to the second file in the dossier, shifting my vengeful focus to my darling daughter-in-law, Clara. Harrison had executed the termination of her blind trust connections with absolute surgical precision. The report detailed a highly embarrassing, incredibly public incident that had occurred just an hour ago. Clara had strutted into an exclusive, high-end interior design firm, dripping in expensive designer labels. She was ready to sign a massive, binding contract to completely gut and remodel my entire family house. She had confidently handed over her sleek, heavy black credit card to pay the exorbitant $50,000 retainer fee. I could vividly picture the smug, entitled look on her face morphing into sheer, unadulterated panic. The card was aggressively declined. Not just declined, but permanently flagged for immediate confiscation by the boutique's payment terminal. She had tried 3 other premium credit cards, frantically dialing customer service while the snooty designers watched her public humiliation unfold. Every single account she had access to was frozen solid, completely locked down by the invisible financial fortress I had built. She was currently sitting in her luxury SUV in the parking lot, crying and furiously texting Julian for help. She was completely oblivious to the terrifying fact that her husband's corporate world was also burning to the ground at that exact moment. They were both drowning in a violent, synchronized storm of my own creation, desperately grasping for a safety net that simply did not exist. But the most beautiful, poetic part of this entire orchestrated disaster was yet to come. I knew exactly what Julian's next desperate, pathetic move would be when his back was truly against the wall. With his company facing imminent bankruptcy and his wife's credit lines magically vaporized, he would panic. He would rush straight to the local bank branch, clutching that forged power of attorney document like a holy grail. He would try to drain my modest, personal checking and savings, accounts to temporarily plug the massive, bleeding holes in his sinking ship. He arrogantly assumed my life savings of $80,000 would be his ultimate saving grace. What my foolish son didn't know was that I had anticipated this exact, greedy maneuver months ago. That local bank account was nothing but a cleverly disguised decoy, a shiny, lethal trap waiting to be sprung. I leaned back against the stiff, uncomfortable pillows, closing my eyes and listening to the distant hum of the facility. I was physically trapped in a prison of their making, but I held the absolute only key to their survival. Let them scramble, let them sweat, let them feel the crushing, suffocating weight of total, inescapable ruin. The trap was fully set, the bait was incredibly tempting, and the jaws were about to snap shut with bone-crushing force. I just had to sit here in the quiet dark and wait for the inevitable, desperate phone call. Chapter 4. The Poison Bait. The sterile wall clock in my room ticked with an agonizing, rhythmic slowness. It was exactly 2:15 p.m., the precise hour I knew my desperate son would make his fatal mistake. I was sitting in a faded vinyl armchair, pretending to watch a mindless daytime soap opera on the tiny, muted television. But my eyes were glued to the encrypted screen of my satellite phone, waiting for Harrison's inevitable update. Julian was a remarkably predictable creature when he was backed into a corner. He lacked the intellect for complex problem-solving, always relying on brute force and unearned entitlement to get his way. Right now, his tech company was bleeding out on the boardroom floor, and his wife's luxury lifestyle had violently crashed into a brick wall. I knew he would sprint to the First National Bank on Oak Street, sweating through his custom Italian suit. He would slap that forged power of attorney onto the polished mahogany counter, demanding immediate access to my life savings. He thought the $80,000 sitting in that humble checking account would be his temporary salvation. Suddenly, the phone vibrated violently in my palm, flashing a high-priority encrypted text from Harrison. "The rat is in the trap," the message read, followed by a live audio link patched directly from our private investigator on the scene. I quickly pressed the device to my ear, holding my breath as the ambient noise of a busy bank lobby filled my head. "I don't care about your internal protocols, Helen. I need this wire transfer executed immediately." Julian's voice barked through the speaker. He sounded incredibly frantic, his usual arrogant composure completely shattered by the morning's catastrophic events. "My father is incapacitated, and this power of attorney gives me absolute, uncontested control over his assets." I could practically hear the arrogant sneer on his face, as he shoved the fraudulent document toward the poor, unsuspecting bank manager. But Helen was a seasoned veteran of the banking industry, and she was meticulously following the hidden tripwires I had laid down months ago. "Of course, Mr. Vance, let me just run this document through our central verification system," Helen replied with practiced, icy politeness. There was a tense, agonizing silence on the audio feed, punctuated only by the rapid clacking of a computer keyboard. I closed my eyes, savoring the absolute perfection of this terrifying moment. You see, that specific checking account wasn't just a simple decoy. It was a highly sensitive, financially rigged landmine. I had explicitly instructed the bank's fraud department to place a code-red lock on that specific routing number. Any attempt to access it via a power of attorney would instantly trigger a massive, automated security protocol. "Mr. Vance, I'm afraid there is a severe problem with this document," Helen's voice finally echoed through the speaker, dropping an octave in seriousness. "What do you mean there's a problem?" Julian snapped, his voice cracking slightly with raw, unfiltered panic. "It's signed, notarized, and completely legal, so just give me the damn money." "Sir, our system has flagged this power of attorney for suspected elder financial abuse and immediate forensic review," Helen stated loudly, ensuring the entire lobby could hear. I let out a low, dark chuckle that vibrated deep in my chest. The account is now permanently frozen, and standard federal regulations require us to immediately notify the local authorities regarding this fraudulent document. "You're calling the cops." Julian gasped, the sheer terror in his voice practically dripping through the encrypted connection. "I am not calling them, sir. The automated system has already dispatched them to this branch," Helen replied coldly. I heard the distinct, chaotic sound of papers being violently snatched from a desk, followed by the frantic squeak of expensive leather shoes running across a marble floor. Julian was fleeing the bank like a common, terrified thief in broad daylight. He had walked in expecting to steal an old man's modest nest egg, and he was running out as a prime suspect in a felony fraud investigation. The audio feed clicked dead, leaving me in the quiet, suffocating silence of my nursing home room once again. I slowly lowered the phone, a profound sense of dark, poetic justice washing over my tired bones. Julian had absolutely nothing left to his name. His company was bankrupt, his wife's accounts were seized, and now he was officially fleeing from a potential federal indictment. He was completely and utterly ruined, stripped of every single ounce of fake power he thought he possessed. But as I stared at the peeling wallpaper of my tiny, pathetic cell, I knew the game wasn't entirely over. Destroying his finances was merely the necessary preparation for the real, psychological lesson. I didn't just want him to be broke. I wanted him to understand the exact, excruciating pain of being discarded by the people who were supposed to love him. It was time for Clara to realize that her wealthy, successful husband was now a penniless, radioactive liability. And I knew exactly how fast a greedy rat would abandon a sinking ship when the cold water finally reached her neck. Chapter 5. Rats Fleeing the Ship. The sun began to set, casting long, sinister shadows across the cheap linoleum floor of my room. Dinner had come and gone, another tray of unidentifiable mush that I happily ignored. My appetite was being thoroughly satisfied by something far more delicious than institutional food. I was feasting on the absolute, undeniable destruction of my son's marriage. My encrypted phone buzzed softly in the twilight, illuminating the dark room with a harsh, blue glare. Harrison had just bypassed the security firewall of my own house, hacking into the hidden smart home cameras I had installed years ago. Julian and Clara thought they owned the property, but I still held the master administrative codes to every single lens and microphone. I tapped the screen, bringing up a crystal-clear, high-definition feed of my grand living room. Clara was pacing back and forth across the expensive Persian rug like a caged, rabid animal. She was still wearing the designer outfit from her humiliating boutique visit, but her perfect makeup was completely smeared with angry tears. The heavy oak front door suddenly burst open, and Julian stumbled into the foyer. He looked like a hunted fugitive, his expensive Italian suit rumpled and soaked in cold sweat. "Where the hell have you been?" Clara shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly through the hidden microphone. "My black card was declined in front of the entire design team, Julian. I was treated like a common beggar." Julian didn't even try to comfort his hysterical wife. He collapsed onto the plush velvet sofa, burying his face in his trembling hands. "It's all gone, Clara," he gasped, his voice cracking with absolute pathetic despair. "The company is bankrupt. The investors pulled out, and the bank just flagged Dad's power of attorney as a federal fraud." Clara froze in her tracks, her manic pacing coming to a sudden, dead halt. I leaned closer to the tiny screen, watching her greedy, calculating brain process this catastrophic information. There was no concern for her husband's well-being, no shock at the potential criminal charges, and absolutely no sympathy. There was only the terrifying realization that her limitless ATM had just been permanently unplugged. "What do you mean, it's all gone?" Clara whispered, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. "I mean, we have absolutely nothing left, Clara, and the police are probably looking for me right now." Julian sobbed, looking up at her with desperate, pleading eyes. He reached out to grab her hand, seeking the warmth and support of the woman he loved. But Clara violently snatched her arm away as if he were suddenly infected with a deadly disease. "You absolute, useless idiot," she spat, her face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust. "You promised me we were taking your father's estate today. You promised me the renovations, the money, everything." "I tried, Clara, but the bank locked it down. It's a trap." Julian cried, completely breaking down in the middle of my living room. I watched in silent, grim fascination as the illusion of their perfect marriage shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Clara didn't hesitate for a single second. She spun on her designer heels and marched straight up the grand staircase toward the master bedroom. "Where are you going?" Julian yelled, scrambling off the sofa and stumbling clumsily after her. "I am packing my bags and going to my sister's house," Clara yelled back, not even bothering to look over her shoulder. "I am not going down with this sinking ship, Julian, and I am certainly not going to prison for your stupid, botched fraud scheme." Julian fell to his knees on the carpet, begging and pleading for her to stay, completely stripped of his dignity. It was a pathetic, nauseating display of weakness. He had thrown his own father into a bleak, lonely nursing home without a single ounce of hesitation. And now, the woman he had done it all for was throwing him away with the exact same ruthless efficiency. Karma was not just a concept, it was a highly targeted weapon, and I was the one pulling the trigger. The live feed showed Clara dragging two massive suitcases out the front door, slamming it shut behind her. Julian was left completely alone in the massive, silent house, kneeling in the dark, surrounded by the ruins of his life. I slowly locked the screen of my phone, the blue light fading away, leaving me in the shadows of my room. The first phase of my revenge was officially complete. But Julian was a desperate, cornered animal, and cornered animals always return to the only source of food they know. He would realize that there was only one person on Earth who could possibly untangle this massive, legal nightmare. He was going to come crawling back to this wretched nursing home. And when he finally walked through my door, the real psychological torture was going to begin. Chapter 6: The Beggar in a Bespoke Suit. I expected him to arrive before breakfast, but desperation is a heavy, humiliating anchor that slows a man down. It wasn't until the sterile lunch carts began rattling down the hallway that my door finally creaked open. Julian stood in the doorway, looking absolutely nothing like the arrogant tech CEO who had dumped me here yesterday. His expensive Italian suit was deeply wrinkled, stained with what looked like dried sweat and cheap alcohol. His hair was a disheveled mess, and dark, heavy bags hung under his bloodshot, terrified eyes. He looked exactly like a man who had spent the entire night running from shadows and ghosts. "Dad!" he croaked, his voice barely a raspy whisper as he stepped into the cramped, dimly lit room. I didn't immediately look up from the faded paperback novel I was pretending to read. I deliberately let the heavy, suffocating silence stretch out, forcing him to stand there and marinate in his own pathetic misery. "Julian," I finally replied, keeping my tone perfectly flat and devoid of any paternal warmth. "Did you forget to pack my favorite slippers when you threw me out of my own house?" He flinched as if I had physically struck him across the face with a heavy iron bar. He slowly closed the door behind him and took a hesitant step toward my lumpy, uncomfortable bed. "Dad, I am in serious trouble, and I desperately need your help right now," he pleaded, his hands trembling violently at his sides. "My company went under yesterday morning. My investors vanished, and Clara actually packed her bags and left me." He practically collapsed into the cheap vinyl armchair, burying his face in his hands as a pathetic sob racked his chest. "And the bank? The bank flagged the power of attorney document as a federal fraud, Dad. The police are actively looking for me, and I have absolutely nowhere else to go." I slowly closed my book and placed it on the rolling bedside table, staring coldly at the broken shell of my son. There was a time, many decades ago, when seeing him cry would have broken my heart into a million pieces. But that soft, forgiving father had officially died the exact moment Julian forced me to sign those admission papers. "That sounds like a terribly complicated situation, Julian," I said, my voice dripping with calculated, icy indifference. "But I am just a frail, senile old man living in a nursing home, remember. What could a useless, discarded burden like me possibly do to fix your massive, self-inflicted disaster?" Julian looked up, his eyes wide with a sickening mixture of desperate hope and profound confusion. "You can call the bank, Dad. You can tell them the power of attorney was a simple misunderstanding. You can clear my name with the police, and maybe let me borrow some money from your savings just to hire a defense lawyer." He was still incredibly blind, still foolishly believing that my meager $80,000 was the absolute center of the universe. He still thought he was the smartest person in the room, just experiencing a temporary stroke of incredibly bad luck. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Julian," I whispered, leaning forward so he could see the absolute lack of mercy in my eyes. "The bank locked that account because I specifically ordered them to lock it if you ever tried to touch it." The air in the tiny room seemed to instantly freeze, the temperature plummeting as my words finally registered in his panicked brain. His jaw dropped slightly, a look of sheer, unadulterated horror slowly washing over his pale, sweaty face. You knew," he stammered, physically backing away from me until his shoulders hit the peeling floral wallpaper. "I knew you were forging the documents. I knew you were stealing my house, and I knew you were going to dump me here." I stood up slowly, deliberately leaving my wooden cane resting uselessly against the nightstand. I didn't need it, and I wanted him to see exactly how strong, sharp, and capable I truly was. "I let you put me in this miserable, depressing prison because I needed you to feel the absolute security of victory. I needed you to believe you had completely won, so the inevitable fall would utterly destroy you. But how did you bankrupt my company?" Julian gasped, his mind desperately trying to connect the impossible dots. "How did Clara's credit cards all decline at the exact same time, Dad?" A slow, predatory smile stretched across my face as I prepared to deliver the final, crushing blow to his fabricated reality. "Because, my arrogant, foolish son, the $80,000 in that local bank was just a shiny piece of bait. The real money, the massive fortune that secretly funded your pathetic startup and your wife's luxury lifestyle, has always belonged to me." Julian's knees finally buckled, and he slid down the wall, collapsing onto the cheap linoleum floor in a heap of absolute despair. He was gasping for air like a fish violently thrown onto dry land. He was finally beginning to understand the terrifying, incomprehensible scale of the monster he had foolishly awakened. Chapter 7: The Weight of a Nine-Figure Ghost. He stared up at me from the cold linoleum floor, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and total disbelief. His brain was desperately trying to reject the impossible truth I had just dropped on him. "That's a lie," he whispered, his voice shaking so violently he could barely form the words. "You were just a mid-level accountant at a boring logistics firm. Dad, you don't have that kind of money." I looked down at the pathetic, sniveling man who shared my DNA, feeling absolutely nothing but cold, clinical disgust. I was an accountant, Julian, but I was also incredibly smart, patient, and completely ruthless when it came to investments. While you were busy buying flashy sports cars and showing off on social media, I was quietly building an empire. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the encrypted satellite phone, the heavy, dark metal gleaming in the dim light. I unlocked the screen with my fingerprint and opened the primary executive dashboard for Vance Capital. I slowly crouched down, bringing the glowing blue screen right up to his tear-stained, terrified face. "Look at it, Julian," I commanded, my voice echoing with the undeniable authority of a true king. "Look at the exact net worth of the useless, senile old man you threw away like yesterday's garbage." His bloodshot eyes darted to the screen, scanning the endless rows of offshore accounts, commercial real estate holdings, and massive stock portfolios. I watched the exact moment his fragile mind completely shattered under the weight of the staggering, 9-figure number glowing at the bottom of the screen. It was more money than he could have ever made in 100 lifetimes of running his pathetic, fake tech company. The Cayman angel investor that kept your sinking ship afloat for 5 miserable years was actually my private trust. I funded your entire fake reality because I wanted to see if you would ever actually learn how to be a real man. But instead of building something genuine, you chose to steal the only modest asset you thought I had left. Julian let out a raw, agonizing wail, a sound so pathetic it actually made me physically recoil in disgust. He lunged forward, desperately wrapping his trembling arms around my legs, burying his wet face against my knees. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I was stupid, I was greedy, and Clara pushed me into it." He sobbed hysterically. "Please, I am your only son, your own flesh and blood. You can't just let me go to prison." He was playing the ultimate, desperate card of family loyalty, the very same loyalty he had violently betrayed just 24 hours ago. I didn't kick him away, but I didn't offer him a single ounce of comfort either. I just stood there like a statue carved from solid ice, looking down at the wreckage of my own creation. You stopped being my son the exact second you forged my signature on that fraudulent power of attorney. You traded your father for a cheap, suburban house and a few $1,000s in a decoy checking account. You made your choice with absolute, cold-blooded clarity, Julian, and now you are going to choke on the consequences. I reached down and grabbed him by the collar of his ruined, expensive suit, pulling him roughly to his feet. He was practically dead weight, completely paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of his catastrophic failure. The police are already building a massive federal fraud case against you as we speak. And Harrison Sterling, the most ruthless corporate lawyer on the Eastern Seaboard, is personally ensuring you never see a single dime of my real money. You are going to lose your freedom, your reputation, and every single thing you ever claimed to own. I shoved him hard toward the heavy wooden door of the nursing home room. He stumbled backward, catching himself on the doorframe, looking at me as if I were the devil himself. "Now get out of my room, Julian, before I call the orderlies and have you physically thrown out into the street." He didn't say another word, his spirit completely and utterly broken into a million unrecoverable pieces. He turned and shuffled out into the bleak, fluorescent hallway, a dead man walking straight toward his own inevitable doom. I watched him go, feeling a strange, hollow sense of absolute victory settling deep into my chest. The trap had worked flawlessly, the poison had fully set in, and the rats were finally drowning in the dark. Chapter 8. The Architect of Ruins. I didn't spend another night in that lumpy, miserable bed. Exactly 1 hour after Julian dragged his broken spirit out of my room, a sleek, armored Maybach pulled into the Sunset Meadows parking lot. Harrison Sterling walked through the sliding glass doors, wearing a sharp, bespoke suit that cost more than the facility's entire annual budget. He didn't come to visit a dying patient. He came to formally extract his most valuable client. I packed my single, battered leather suitcase with the exact same slow, deliberate movements I had used when I arrived. But this time, I wasn't a discarded burden being thrown away by a greedy, ungrateful son. I was a king, stepping out of a temporary, self-imposed exile to reclaim his absolute, rightful throne. As I walked down the sterile hallway for the very last time, I saw Nurse Maya standing frozen by the main nurse's station. She looked genuinely terrified, watching Harrison's massive, heavily armed security detail flank my sides like a presidential escort. I stopped right in front of her, offering a warm, genuine smile that I hadn't faked for a single second since arriving. "Thank you for the oatmeal, Maya, and for treating a seemingly useless old man with actual human dignity," I said softly. I reached into my heavy wool coat and handed her a sealed, thick cream envelope bearing the Vance Capital crest. "There is a cashier's check inside that will completely pay off your nursing school loans and buy you a very nice house." Her jaw dropped instantly, her eyes widening in absolute, paralyzing shock as she stared at the heavy envelope in her trembling hands. "Consider it a very small return on investment for the incredibly rare kindness you showed me in the dark." I didn't wait for her to stammer out a thank you. I just turned and walked out through the heavy glass doors into the crisp, evening air. The ride back into the heart of the sprawling city was quiet, smooth, and incredibly satisfying. Harrison handed me a crystal glass of rare, aged scotch, officially briefing me on the final, devastating fallout of Protocol Lazarus. Julian was aggressively apprehended by federal marshals in a cheap, roadside motel room later that exact same evening. He was desperately trying to flee across state lines with a duffel bag full of useless, maxed-out credit cards. He was now facing multiple federal charges for wire fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse, carrying a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. Clara's own sister had violently refused to take her in, absolutely terrified of being implicated in the massive, exploding federal investigation. The last private security report Harrison received placed my darling, luxury-obsessed daughter-in-law working the graveyard shift at a greasy, 24-hour diner. She was currently scrubbing dried ketchup off cheap ceramic plates just to pay the weekly rent on a tiny, roach-infested studio apartment. She had been forced to pawn every single designer handbag and diamond necklace she owned just to afford basic groceries. They had wanted my wealth so desperately, and in the end, they received exactly the brutal reality they truly deserved. Absolute, crushing poverty and the inescapable, suffocating weight of their own greedy, vicious choices. The Maybach didn't take me back to the modest, suburban house they had so arrogantly tried to steal from me. That house was currently sitting completely empty, locked down by federal authorities with bright yellow crime scene tape across the front door. Instead, the luxury car pulled into the secure underground garage of the tallest, most exclusive residential skyscraper in the entire financial district. I took the private, biometric elevator straight up to the penthouse, stepping out into a massive, glass-walled sanctuary hidden in the clouds. I walked slowly over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the glittering, sprawling metropolis far below me. Millions of tiny, glowing lights blinked in the darkness, representing millions of lives, ambitions, and endless, insatiable greed. My son thought he could play a ruthless game of chess with a frail old man who secretly owned the entire board. He thought he was the apex predator, and I was just the weak, dying prey patiently waiting to be consumed. But family or not, you never, ever try to bury a man who holds the deed to the entire graveyard. I raised my crystal glass of scotch to the empty, silent room, a cold, victorious smile playing on my weathered lips. Arthur Vance was finally home, and the Vance financial empire was safer and stronger than it had ever been. Because a true legacy isn't just about the massive piles of money you leave behind for the next generation. Sometimes, true legacy is about the brutal, unforgettable lessons you teach the exact people who try to take it from you. My son dumped me in a nursing home to steal my house. He didn't know I'm a